Yo, this thing's back again. I did an engine to this and a whole bunch of other stuff, and now he broke the transmission. So I'll be doing that. He just got a used one. 2012 WRX. I'm digging the four-wheel drive lifted look. First thing I'm going to do is get his extra super fancy rims off. He's got these purple anodized lug nuts on here, so I can't use an impact on those because I might make them look not as pretty. Oh, those are pretty light. Fancy. I'm going to take this Timic off first. Top mount intercooler. I think these are supposed to be 12 millimeter, but for whatever reason, these two for the turbocharger are 13s. This one's a 12. I got a vacuum line for this blow-off valve. This is the factory pipe for the factory blow-off valve. That's got to get disconnected too. I got it plugged off. I'm just going to get it out of the way because there's a hose clamp down in here. This clamp right here. Negative. I can get this dipstick out. I'll leave that out. Got two 14 millimeters for this slave cylinder. You don't have to, but I always like to tape these down. Just because on certain vehicles I've had them pop out before, and I don't know. I just try to compress it all the way. That way when I go to put it in, it goes in real easy. 14 millimeter on this dog bone. You don't have to, but I'm going to loosen up the bolt on the dog bone and just pull it all the way up and tighten it back down a little so it stays up and it'll be out of my way. Got a bunch of 10 millimeters on this heat shield. This is aftermarket. The factory ones probably got more bolts on it. I'm going to put a couple rags together and stick them in this hole. Don't really care about it, but I might as well put one in this dipstick too. I have a 10 millimeter ground here, but I'm going to keep this ground wire for the other transmission. So I'm going to go way down in here, and there's a 12 millimeter. I'm going to take this nut off. There's a really long bolt and a nut. There's my ground. There's a little bit of wire loomage here. Got a 14 millimeter for the starter bolt that's got a ground on it. There's a bracket right here with a 14 millimeter on it. I have to unbolt and take out the downpipe for the turbocharger. So there's like 5 14 millimeters I think on here. And they're usually pretty darn tight. Got this bracket here for the heat shield. I'm going to try to get as many of these bolts out from the top that I can. I think there's one more. And I got to get at it from underneath, I think. I got a bell housing bolt here I can get at, so I'm going to take that off. That's a 14. That's pretty much everything I can get at from topside. I'm going to drain the transmission fluid next. I got a T60 Torx. That's the biggest one I have. It looks like it's larger than that though. But this should work. Ooh, it's gray and funky looking. Got a little bit of metal stuck to the magnet. All the rest of that stuff that's in there looks like it's mostly aluminum. I don't know if that's normal or not, but that looks fantastic. That'd be a cool color for a car. I rebuilt this engine about 12,000 miles ago, and for some reason this wastegate pipe, it worked its way up. It's supposed to be pointing down. Right now it's pointing at the freaking firewall, which is really strange. I don't know how it did that. Probably because it's just aftermarket. It's got pinch clamps on it and they're pretty gay. But whatever, it's teal. It's supposed to be the great, awesome, high dollar stuff that's supposed to work so well, so I shouldn't be talking it down. Anyways, I got to take this pipe off to get the transmission off, to get it out. But since there's a bolt that's buried way up here, I think it's going to be easiest for me to just take the whole wastegate off. So if you don't have this aftermarket stuff, you won't have to do any of this. I'm going to get this vacuum hose off of here. There's a pinch clamp up here that's a 3/16. There's a nut on the top too, and I think that's an 8mm. Suddenly, after looking at this, looks like I got plenty enough room and I don't have to take this down pipe out after all. I think I'm going to leave it in there. I'm going to work on trying to get this center section of pipe off. If you got some factory stuff, you might have to drop the whole exhaust or something. I don't know. 14mm on this hanger. Band clamp here. It's a 13. Couple 14s here. Got an oxygen sensor I gotta unplug. I actually got two sensors here. I got one for the wide band, which you might not have because it's aftermarket. And I got an oxygen sensor. Now if I'm lucky, I can get this apart without a fuss. I don't think I'll be able to find a gasket for that either. It's pretty much aftermarket. Most parts stores don't carry this stuff. I'll cross that road when I get to it. I'm going to try to squirrel this cross member out of here next. 14mm here, and a couple 17mm. I'm going to take the starter out next. The starter solenoid wire, you just push in on it, pull it out. It's just a flat connector. And this here's a 12mm. I already took the top one off from the top. So I just got this one 14mm right here to take off. I'm going to take all these drive shafts off next. I got to get this heat shield off of here. They're 12mm. I did that to get at the center section or carrier bearing. There's two 14mm bolts on here. I got four 12mm on this rear differential. These funky bolts got a flat on them, so they only go in one way. Keeps them from turning. Just give these a couple of taps. This thing slides right out. Now for the front axles. There's a lower ball joint you can take off if you want. I don't want to do that though. I'm going to unbolt the strut to get this pistol out of here. 12 millimeters for these. I want to take these off just to make sure I don't stretch them. So it looks like there's an eccentric bolt on the top here. I can see some notches on it. So if you turn this, it's gonna move this in and out, and it's gonna throw your camber off, positive and negative camber. So I'm gonna scribe this with a hook tool to make sure I get it on the same exact way. Because if I don't, it's gonna throw the alignment off. I'm gonna put a mark there, a mark here. These are 19 millimeters. Yeah, see there's little notches on here. There's a pointer on the strut over here. So you can mark it, but the funky thing is though, is if you just mark it, it actually turns this much. So you're not gonna get the alignment back to right if you mark this bolt. It's pretty much just used as a guide for when you do an alignment. I got an 1.25 inch socket here because I'm old. You should be able to just push this shaft right through. I cranked the wheel to the right as much as I could. It was a little easier to get out that way. And you can just get under here with a pry bar and just give it a pop. Pull it out. Since I didn't take out or loosen up the turbocharger, there's studs on the bottom of this bell housing. And if I just take these nuts off and slide it back, it's going to hit the turbocharger. So one way to do it is to loosen up the bolts for the turbo to get it to flop around so you can just kind of push it up out of the way. But I'm going to leave it on and I'm going to take these studs out. If I just take all these bolts off and let it hang, I can bend that clutch and then it's going to be a problem. So basically what I'm going to do is I got 5 bolts left, and I'm going to take out these bolts and studs. I got a stud puller. If this was a non-turbocharged vehicle, I'd leave these studs in there because it makes it really nice and easy to... It really helps getting this thing in. Well, there's a 14 millimeter way up here underneath the turbocharger I'm going to take off. I'm going to take this one off too. And this one I'm just going to loosen up just a little bit, just so it's easy to get out. That should be the only bolt left in here. I got a short 2x4 here. I'm going to just stab this under here. Lift up on the tranny just a little bit, just to make sure it doesn't fall too much. I'm going to take this mount off of here. I think I'm going to need to swap this bracket out too, so I might as well take it off. Out for the shift linkage. This is a 12 millimeter. There's a nut on the top I got to hold on to. Now it's sort of out of the way. I talked myself into taking this bracket off because this kind of sucks. I set up my crusty, trusty Harbor Freight transmission jack. Took that 2x4 out. I just got to get this one bolt out. These Subarus, they can be a real pain in the butt to separate the engine from the transmission sometimes. This thing's not coming apart. They got no good pry points on this transmission either. Subaru's good for that. I don't know why they do that. I got a really sharp, thick putty knife. I'm just going to try to get in between these two and try to separate it this way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. And it did. This engine's tipping forward on me, which is no good. I gotta get it to tip back that way. I'm gonna try to remedy that with a ratcheting strap. Put one end right here, I guess. I cut the hook off of this strap and I burned the end. So now I got two. I'll just stick this in here. Pull it tight. Oh yeah, that's super nice. Super nice junk. Oh yeah, it's out. I got you, you little brat. I get to swap some parts over. I'm going to replace all the seals. That's the part number I got for all the seals. Two of them are actually the same, but they're marked right and left, and they got the same numbers for dimensions. But for some reason they're listed different. I don't know why, but they're the same seals. They were fun to find. That's why I put the numbers on there. I got a regular piece of 1.5" PVC pipe, and I tapered the inside of this so this seal can fit really nice in here, just like that, for my seal installer. There's a roll pin here I gotta knock out. I'm trying to replace this throwout bearing. This is the one that came off of this transmission, and this is the one that came off of the old one. And I just put this on 12,000 miles ago, so I wanted to use it. But this has an oversized bushing on it. They probably had a problem with it where it locked up, so it's got a really nice stainless steel bushing on it. So I gotta reuse the one that it came with. I got some Honda urea grease. I'm gonna put some on this ball. I'm gonna put some on this nice stainless steel shaft. They should all be like that. I can put some on here on the fork. Put some on the ball for the slave cylinder. There's a groove inside of here in this throwout bearing. I want to fill that groove up with grease. That's how these things stay greased. That groove's got to be, you know, level with the rest of the thing. There's a wire clip for this, and the wire's got to go around the inside of the fork. That's really nice. Lining this thing up is definitely the not so fun part. You can't force it in there, and it's got to go in just perfect. If it don't go in just perfect, you're probably going to wreck something. My ratchet is hitting the pipe. Oh, can't do that. Oh, that should work for me. Okay, so I got that much distance. I made sure all these bolts, I could just start them. I can turn them all with my hands. I got it so like 4 of these bolts, I got the 2 studs in the bottom started. I probably got like 4 or 5 threads on there. I put one here, and I found a really long bolt I put over here. And then I just made sure that everything's level. You know, I stick my finger all the way around, and I make sure it's all level. And then I just kept on working the transmission in and out, and finally it caught all the splines and it went in that far. So I can start all these bolts this far. I'm not gonna put that starter in yet. And I'm just gonna gradually, I'm gonna get them so they're started like this, all of them, And then I'm just going to gradually wiggle the transmission, and it'll keep feeding it in little by little by little, and I'll just keep tightening these bolts up. That way I know nothing's binding up and it's all going in nice and square. Yeah, just to make sure I got it, I got them all started again, and I gave it a little wiggle and it pulled in a little more. So now I get to do it again. There it is, it's all the way in. That's how you do it. I put the block of wood back under the transmission. Don't really like the idea of one bolt holding on this downpipe, messing with this exhaust. So I'm going to bolt this back down. I don't have a gasket for this, so I'm going to use the fancy gasket making stuff. I suppose it would have been easier if I filled this up before I put the intercooler on, but whatever. I got a long funnel and a bunch of makeshift hoses, so it's okay. I'm going to put about 3.5 quarts of oil in this thing. I got this Subaru stuff. Okay, I have 3.5 quarts of fluid in here. The level's just a hair over full, so it should be perfect. Now if I did this right, it should work. I'm gonna start it up and go through the gears, make sure everything's kosher, and then I'm gonna recheck that fluid. This guy told me he wants me to test drive it. I said, no, you test drive it. I don't want to test drive it. But I guess I'm going to grow a pair and go for a drive. Oh my God, he's got a TPMS light on. What do I do? It makes swooshing noises and it backfires. It must be junk. More swooshing noises, more backfiring. It makes a lot of funny noises. Other than that, the transmission works. I'm gonna call this a fix. Okay, bye.